Blood stained the saddle beneath him as Benjamin Oakley rode into the valley, though it was only rust from years of hard use that marked the leather now, not violence. He had left those days behind in Texas 3 months ago, when the last of his family had been buried under the unforgiving sun, and he had finally admitted there was nothing left to hold him there anymore. The horse beneath him, a gray mare named Stella, picked her way carefully down the rocky path toward the thin column of smoke rising from somewhere in the distance. Evening was coming fast, and Benjamin knew better than to spend another night alone in these Colorado mountains during April when the temperatures could still drop below freezing after dark. He was 26 years old and felt twice that age. The weight of wandering had settled into his bones over these past months, making every mile feel like 10. He had worked odd jobs from town to town, never staying long enough to unpack his bedroll more than once or twice. The gold rush had brought thousands to Colorado territory, but Benjamin was not looking for fortune in the ground. He was not entirely sure what he was looking for anymore, only that he would recognize it when he found it. Or perhaps that was just the lie he told himself to keep moving forward. The smoke grew thicker as he descended, and soon he could make out buildings in the fading light. Not a town exactly, but a small farm tucked into a protected valley where the mountains formed natural windbreaks on 3 sides. A modest house stood at the center, built from rough-hewn logs that had weathered to a silver gray. A barn leaned slightly to one side, and he could see fencing that marked out pastures where a handful of cattle grazed. Chickens scattered as he approached, their indignant squawking breaking the peaceful quiet. Benjamin pulled Stella to a stop near the house and dismounted slowly, his legs stiff from the long day in the saddle. Before he could call out a greeting, the front door opened, and a man emerged holding a rifle. He was older, perhaps in his 50s, with a thick gray beard and suspicious eyes that took in every detail of the stranger before him. "Evening," Benjamin said, keeping his hands visible and away from the gun at his hip. "I am hoping you might spare some water for my horse and point me toward Black Hawk. I seem to have gotten turned around." The man studied him for a long moment before lowering the rifle slightly. "Black Hawk is another 2 hours north, but you will not make it before dark. These mountain paths are dangerous when you cannot see where you are stepping." "I have managed so far," Benjamin said, though he knew the man was right. "Your horse has not," the man replied, nodding toward Stella. "She is favoring her left foreleg." Benjamin turned to look and cursed under his breath. The man was right. He had been so focused on simply moving forward that he had failed to notice Stella's slight limp. Guilt washed over him. The mare had carried him faithfully across 3 states, and he had been too wrapped up in his own misery to pay proper attention. "Let me take a look at her," a voice said, and Benjamin turned to see a young woman emerge from the barn. She was carrying a bucket in one hand and moved with the confident stride of someone completely at home in her surroundings. Dark auburn hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and her dress was simple calico worn with work boots that had seen better days. But it was her eyes that caught his attention, green as new grass and sharp with intelligence as they assessed both him and his horse. "Theresa can handle any animal better than anyone I have ever known," the older man said, some of the suspicion leaving his voice. "Thomas Ellsworth. This is my farm, and that is my daughter." "Benjamin Oakley," he replied, touching the brim of his hat toward Theresa. "I would be grateful for any help." Theresa had already set down her bucket and was running her hands along Stella's leg with gentle competence. The horse, usually skittish with strangers, stood perfectly still under her touch. "Stone bruise, I think," Theresa said after a moment. "Not serious, but she needs rest. Walking her another 2 hours tonight would make it much worse. We have space in the barn, Thomas said, though he sounded reluctant. You can bed down there for the night. In the morning, if the horse is better, you can continue on. I am grateful, Benjamin said sincerely. I can pay for the trouble. We do not take charity, but we do not turn away travelers in need either, Thomas replied gruffly. Come on then. Let us get your horse settled before it gets full dark. Benjamin led Stella toward the barn, very aware of Theresa walking beside him. She smelled like hay and wood smoke and something floral he could not quite place. He tried not to stare, focusing instead on the barn as they approached. It might lean slightly, but it was sturdy enough, with clean stalls and fresh hay piled in the corner. You have come far? Theresa asked as she helped him remove Stella's saddle. Texas originally, Benjamin said. Been moving since February, running from something or towards something. The question was direct enough that he looked at her in surprise. She met his gaze steadily, no coyness or false modesty in her manner. He found it refreshing after months of superficial conversations in countless towns. Neither. Both. I am not entirely sure anymore, he admitted, surprising himself with the honesty. Well, you can figure it out after a good night's sleep, Theresa said practically. She examined Stella's hoof more closely, cleaning out some packed dirt and a small stone. This is what caused the trouble. Keep her off it tomorrow too, just to be safe. I do not want to impose longer than necessary. Father could use help fixing the barn door, Theresa said, straightening up. The hinges finally gave out last week, and it is too heavy for one person to manage. You help with that tomorrow, and we will call it even for 2 nights' lodging. Benjamin nodded slowly. That seems fair. Good. I will bring you some supper once we have eaten. There is a pump out back for washing up. She left before he could thank her, moving with that same purposeful stride back toward the house. Benjamin settled Stella in the most comfortable stall, making sure she had feed and fresh water, before exploring his accommodations for the night. The hayloft would do fine. He had slept in far worse places over the past months. True to her word, Theresa appeared about an hour later carrying a plate covered with a cloth and a steaming mug. Stew and coffee, she announced. It is not fancy, but it will fill you up. Smells like heaven, Benjamin said truthfully, accepting the plate. His stomach reminded him loudly that he had only eaten jerky and hardtack all day. The stew was rich with beef and vegetables, seasoned with herbs that made it infinitely better than anything he had eaten in weeks. Theresa settled herself on a hay bale, apparently in no hurry to leave. So what did you do in Texas? Ranching mostly. My father had a spread near San Antonio, not huge but enough to keep 3 sons busy. He died 2 years ago. My oldest brother got sick last year, pneumonia. My younger brother was thrown from a horse in January and broke his neck. The words came out flat, drained of emotion from too many repetitions. I sold what was left and started riding. I am sorry, Theresa said quietly, and he could hear genuine sympathy in her voice. That is a lot of loss to carry. What about you? Benjamin asked, eager to turn the conversation away from himself. Born here, Missouri originally, but I do not remember it much. We came west when I was 6, back in '63. Mother wanted adventure and father wanted land. We tried mining first over near Central City, but father was never going to strike it rich. This valley, though, was perfect for farming. We have been here 12 years now. Your mother died 5 years ago. Fever. Theresa's voice was matter of fact, but he could see the shadow that crossed her face. It has been just father and me since then, managing the place. We do well enough. The cattle bring in money and we sell eggs and vegetables to miners when we can. That is a lot of work for 2 people. We manage. Father is strong and I am not afraid of hard work. She stood, brushing hay from her skirt. "You should get some rest. Morning comes early on a farm. Thank you for the food and for helping with Stella." "Animals deserve kindness," Theresa said simply. "Sleep well, Benjamin Oakley." He watched her disappear into the gathering darkness, her lamp bobbing like a firefly as she crossed to the house. Then he finished his supper slowly, savoring every bite, and tried not to think about how the first real conversation he had enjoyed in months had come from a woman he would be leaving behind in a day or two. Sleep came easier than it had in weeks, probably because the hayloft was genuinely comfortable, and he was exhausted down to his bones. He woke to pre-dawn gray light filtering through gaps in the barn walls and the sound of someone moving around below. Sitting up, he could see Theresa milking a cow, her cheek pressed against the animal's flank as her hands worked in practiced rhythm. "Morning," he called down, running his fingers through his hair in a futile attempt to look presentable. "Morning. There is coffee up at the house if you want it. Father is already working on the south fence." Benjamin climbed down and checked on Stella first. The mare seemed in better spirits, though the hoof was still tender when he examined it. Theresa had been right about needing the extra day of rest. He made his way to the house, where Thomas was indeed absent, but a pot of coffee sat warming on the stove. He poured himself a cup and was standing on the porch drinking it when Thomas appeared from the direction of the pastures. "Your horse?" Thomas asked without preamble. "Better, but still needs rest." "Figured as much. Theresa said you agreed to help with the barn door." "Happy to." They worked through the morning, removing the broken hinges and positioning the new ones Thomas had ordered from Black Hawk weeks ago. The door was indeed too heavy for one man to manage alone, but between the two of them, they made steady progress. Thomas was not much for conversation, but he worked hard and knew what he was doing. Benjamin found himself falling into the familiar rhythm of physical labor, the kind where your body remembered what to do and your mind could wander. It was good, honest work. The kind that left you tired but satisfied at the end of the day. The kind he had grown up doing before everything fell apart. Theresa brought them lunch around noon, cold chicken and fresh bread with butter. They ate in the shade of the barn, and Benjamin found himself watching her as she reported on the morning's work to her father. She had collected 24 eggs, found a weak spot in the north fence that would need attention, and treated a cow with a minor infection. She spoke with confidence and competence, and Thomas listened with respect. This was clearly a partnership born of necessity, but made strong through mutual capability. "You have a good setup here," Benjamin commented. "Must be satisfying, building something that lasts." "It is when the weather cooperates and the cattle stay healthy and the miners still have money to buy what we are selling," Thomas said dryly. "Farming is gambling, just with longer odds than cards. But you keep doing it. Because what else is there? I am too old to start over somewhere new, and this land is ours. Nobody can take it away." Thomas fixed him with a measuring look. "What are you planning to do when you get to Black Hawk? More wandering? I am hoping to find work. Maybe save enough to figure out what comes next." "Black Hawk is mostly mining. You have experience with that?" "No, but I can learn." "Mining will kill you faster than ranching," Theresa interjected quietly. "Cave-ins, bad air, accidents with dynamite. The cemetery there is full of young men who thought they could handle it." "Not many other options for someone passing through," Benjamin replied. "There are always options," she said, but did not elaborate. They finished the barn door by mid-afternoon, and it swung smoothly on its new hinges. Thomas tested it several times, nodding approval. "Good work. You have done this before." "I grew up fixing things. Ranches always need repairs." "True enough." Thomas glanced at the sun, calculating time remaining in the day. The fence Theresa mentioned needs attention before it gets worse. You interested in earning another night's lodging?" Benjamin knew he should move on. Every day he stayed was a day closer to settling, to putting down roots again, to risking the kind of loss that had driven him away from Texas in the first place. But Stella could use the extra rest, and the work felt good, and he was not quite ready to leave yet. "I could do that," he agreed. Thomas almost smiled. "Come on then, I will show you where." The fence repair took the rest of the afternoon and required replacing several rotted posts. It was harder work than the door, involving digging and hauling and precise measurements to make sure everything was level and secure. Benjamin's shoulders ached by the time they finished, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from accomplishment rather than aimless wandering. Supper that night was taken at the house, with Benjamin invited to sit at the actual table rather than eating alone in the barn. Theresa had cooked venison with potatoes and carrots, and there was pie for dessert made with preserved apples. The conversation was sparse but comfortable, mostly about the farm and what work needed doing next. "Storm coming," Thomas commented, looking toward the western sky through the window. "You can see it building over the peaks. Should hit tomorrow afternoon." "Spring storms in the mountains are unpredictable," Theresa added. "Could be rain, could be snow. Either way, traveling would not be wise." "I do not want to wear out my welcome," Benjamin said. "You are earning your keep," Thomas replied. "And honestly, having another pair of hands is helpful. If you want to stay a few more days, help us catch up on some projects. I will pay you fair wages for a day's work." Benjamin looked between father and daughter, seeing the same practical assessment in both their faces. This was not charity. This was a business arrangement that happened to benefit everyone involved. What kind of projects? The chicken coop needs expansion. The root cellar door is rotting. Half the tools in the barn need sharpening. The list goes on. Thomas leaned back in his chair. "I am not getting any younger, and Theresa cannot do everything herself. We could use the help, at least until the major things are handled." It made sense. It was practical and logical, and Benjamin could save money while figuring out his next move. That was what he told himself as he agreed to stay for a week, maybe two. The truth was more complicated and had green eyes, and moved with purpose through the world like she knew exactly where she belonged. The storm hit as predicted the next afternoon, rolling in with dramatic speed and bringing heavy rain that drummed on the barn roof like 1,000 impatient fingers. Benjamin was inside sharpening tools when Theresa ducked through the door, her shawl pulled over her head but still soaked through. "The chickens scattered when thunder started," she said breathlessly. "I need help finding them before predators do." They spent an hour in the rain hunting down frightened hens and hauling them back to the coop. Benjamin had never considered chickens to be particularly smart animals, but their talent for hiding in the most inconvenient places was impressive. He ended up climbing a tree to retrieve one especially stubborn bird, getting pecked for his trouble while Theresa laughed from below. "Not so tough now, are you, Cowboy?" she called up. "This bird is possessed," he shouted back, finally getting a grip on the squawking creature. "I swear it is enjoying this." By the time they got the last hen secured, they were both drenched and shivering. Thomas took one look at them from the porch and shook his head. "Get dried off before you both catch cold. Theresa, find Benjamin some of my old clothes. No point in him wearing wet things." Inside, Theresa disappeared and returned with a worn but clean shirt and pants. "These might be a bit short, but they are dry. You can change in the spare room." The spare room was small but tidy, with a narrow bed and a simple dresser. Benjamin changed quickly, grateful to be out of his soaked clothing. The borrowed clothes were indeed slightly short in the arms and legs, but they were warm. When he emerged, Theresa had changed as well and was braiding her wet hair by the fire. "Thank you," he said, "for the clothes and the entertainment." "Entertainment, watching me fight a chicken." "I am sure that was the most fun you have had all week." She grinned, and it transformed her whole face, making her look younger and more carefree than he had seen before. "It was pretty amusing. You should have seen your face when she got your hand. That bird drew blood. You will survive." Thomas had hot soup ready, and they ate while the storm continued to rage outside. The temperature had dropped, and Benjamin could see occasional sleet mixing with the rain. He was deeply grateful not to be out on the trail in this weather. "This will probably last through tomorrow," Thomas observed. "Spring storms always do. We will be stuck inside for the most part." "Good time to go through Mother's things in the attic," Theresa said quietly. "We have been putting that off for years." Thomas's expression closed down. "That can wait." "It has waited 5 years. The mice are getting into the trunks and everything is getting musty. We should at least sort through and save what can be saved." Father and daughter stared at each other across the table, some silent conversation passing between them that Benjamin could not follow. Finally, Thomas sighed. "Fine, tomorrow if the weather keeps us in, but I am not making any promises about how much I can handle." "I know, Father." The next morning dawned gray and cold, with steady rain still falling and fog thick in the valley. After the essential chores were finished, Theresa led Benjamin up to the attic while Thomas made himself scarce in the barn, clearly not ready to face whatever memories waited above. The attic was cramped and dusty, filled with crates and trunks and years of accumulated possessions. Theresa opened the first trunk with careful hands, revealing layers of clothing wrapped in faded paper. "Mother was very particular about her things," she said softly, lifting out a dress of deep blue wool. "She said just because we lived on a farm did not mean we had to dress like paupers. She sounds like she had strong opinions. About everything. She was from a good family in St. Louis, educated and cultured. Everyone thought she was crazy for marrying a miner and moving west, but she never regretted it. She said the adventure was worth more than comfort." Benjamin helped sort through the trunks, separating items that could be saved from those too damaged by time and mice. Theresa talked as they worked, sharing stories about her mother that painted a picture of a vibrant, determined woman who had tackled frontier life with enthusiasm and grace. "She taught me to read from her own books," Theresa said, carefully folding a shawl that had survived intact. "Poetry and novels and history. Father thought it was impractical, but Mother insisted. She said education was the one thing nobody could ever take away from you. She was right about that. You read, when I have the chance. We had a few books at home. I was partial to adventure stories when I was younger. We have a small library downstairs. You are welcome to borrow anything while you are here." They worked through the morning, and Benjamin found himself enjoying the quiet intimacy of the task. Theresa's grief for her mother was still present but softened by time, and she clearly cherished these reminders of the woman who had shaped her. He told stories, too, about his own mother who had died when he was young, and his father's gruff practicality that had hidden a deep well of affection. By lunch, they had sorted through most of the trunks and had several bundles set aside for keeping. Thomas appeared as they were carrying things down from the attic, and his eyes lingered on the blue wool dress draped over Theresa's arm. "Your mother wore that to church on Sundays," he said quietly. "She looked like a queen." "I am going to alter it to fit me," Theresa said, "if that is all right with you. She would have wanted that. Waste not, want not." The storm continued through the afternoon and into the evening, but the atmosphere in the house had shifted somehow. Sorting through the memories had been painful but cathartic, and even Thomas seemed lighter at supper. They played cards after eating, a simple game that Benjamin had not played since his brother had been alive. He lost consistently, but it did not matter. The warmth of the fire, the sound of rain on the roof, and the easy company made it the most content he had felt in longer than he could remember. He was in trouble, and he knew it. This was not supposed to happen. He was supposed to stay detached, keep moving, never let himself care too much about any place or any person. But Theresa's laugh when he miscounted his cards, Thomas's grudging respect when Benjamin proved he could actually handle farm work, and the sense of purpose that came from building and fixing and maintaining something real, all of it was seeping past the walls he had built around himself. The storm broke overnight, and Benjamin woke to clear skies and birds singing their morning songs. He lay in the hayloft watching dawn light paint the rafters gold and tried to remember why he had been so determined to keep moving. What exactly was he moving toward? And what was he running from, really, except the fear of losing something precious again? Maybe that was not a good enough reason anymore. He found Theresa already at work, mucking out stalls with efficient movements. "Morning," she greeted him. "Sleep well." "Better than I have in months," he admitted. "The storm gave us extra time to rest. Father wants to check the pastures today, make sure the rain did not cause any washouts. I thought I would work on expanding the chicken coop like he mentioned. You interested in helping? Sounds good." They spent the day building an extension onto the existing coop, measuring and sawing and hammering boards into place. Theresa was skilled with tools, her hands steady and sure as she worked. Benjamin found himself watching her more than was strictly necessary, noticing the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, how she pushed stray hair back from her face with her forearm, the quiet satisfaction in her expression when a piece fit perfectly. "You are staring," she said without looking up. "Sorry, I was just thinking you are good at this. I have had plenty of practice. When you only have two people to manage everything, you learn to do everything. You ever want something different, a life that is not so much work?" Theresa paused, hammer in hand, and considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to live in a real town, to have neighbors close by and shops and social gatherings. But then I look around at what we have built here, and I cannot imagine leaving it. This is home. This is ours. That matters more than conveniences. Even if it means being lonely, I am not lonely. I have Father and the animals and the work. That is enough." She met his eyes directly. "What about you? Are you lonely, Benjamin Oakley?" The question hit harder than he expected. "Yes," he said honestly. "I have been lonely since my family died, maybe before that even. I thought moving would help, but it just meant being lonely in different places. So why keep moving? Because staying hurts more. Because if I do not let myself care about anything, I cannot lose it. That is not living, that is just surviving. Maybe that is all I am capable of right now." Theresa set down her hammer and brushed sawdust from her hands. "I do not believe that. I have watched you this past week. You care about doing good work. You care about your horse. You care about people, even when you try to pretend you do not. You are just scared. Is that so wrong? No, but it is sad, and I think you are tired of being sad." She picked up her hammer and went back to work, leaving Benjamin to process her words. She was right, of course. He was tired of being sad, tired of wandering, tired of holding himself apart from the world. The question was whether he was brave enough to do something about it. They finished the chicken coop expansion by late afternoon, and Thomas returned to inspect their work with approval. "Fine job. Those hens will be happier with more space, and we can increase our flock come spring." "Happy chickens make better eggs, or so I hear," Benjamin said. "That is the theory. You have a knack for this kind of work. Ever consider settling somewhere and farming? Not really. I grew up ranching, but that is different from crop farming. Not so different as you might think. Both require understanding the land, understanding animals, being willing to work hard for uncertain rewards. You have got the temperament for it. It was high praise coming from Thomas, and Benjamin felt absurdly pleased. Thank you. Just speaking truth. You have been a real help this week. I hope you will consider staying on a while longer, at least until we get caught up on the major projects. I will think about it. But he had already made up his mind. He was staying, at least for now. Black Hawk and whatever opportunities it might hold could wait. This place, this work, these people, they felt right in a way nothing had felt right in a very long time. That evening after supper, Theresa invited him to walk down to the creek that ran along the eastern edge of the property. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and deep purple. The air was cool and clean, washed fresh by the storm. "This is my favorite spot," Theresa said, settling onto a flat rock near the water's edge. "I come here when I need to think, or when the work feels overwhelming, or just to remember what beauty looks like." Benjamin sat beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "It is beautiful. Peaceful. You have a place like this, somewhere that feels like yours." "I used to. There was a hill on our ranch where you could see for miles. I would go up there when I was younger, imagining what lay beyond the horizon." He smiled at the memory. Turns out what lay beyond was mostly more of the same, just in different arrangements. Maybe you were looking in the wrong direction. Maybe I was looking for the wrong thing. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the water flow past and listening to the evening sounds of birds settling in for the night. Benjamin was intensely aware of Theresa beside him, the small distance between them feeling both significant and easy to bridge. He wanted to say something profound, something that would explain the tangle of feelings developing in his chest, but words seemed inadequate. "I am glad you stopped here," Theresa said quietly. "Even if it was just because your horse needed rest, these past days have been good. It is nice having someone new to talk to, someone who understands loss and hard work and what it is like to feel adrift. I am glad too. This place, this life you and your father have built, it is special. You are special." She turned to look at him, her green eyes serious in the fading light. "What are you really looking for, Benjamin? What would make you stop running?" "I am not sure I knew until this week, but I think it is this. A place that feels like home, work that matters, people who matter." He hesitated, then added quietly, "Someone to matter to. You matter here. Father respects you, which is not something he gives easily. The farm is better with you helping, and I." She trailed off, looking back at the water. "I enjoy your company, more than I probably should for someone who is just passing through." What if I was not just passing through? "Are you asking if you can stay longer?" "I am asking if you want me to." Theresa was quiet for a long moment, and Benjamin's heart hammered in his chest waiting for her answer. Then she smiled, soft and genuine. "Yes, I want you to stay, for as long as you want to be here." "That might be a while." "Good." They walked back to the farm as full darkness fell, and Benjamin felt something fundamental shift inside him. He was choosing to stay, choosing to stop running, choosing to let himself care about this place and these people. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The next weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. Benjamin took on more responsibilities around the farm, proving himself capable with both animals and maintenance work. Thomas taught him about crop rotation and soil management, sharing knowledge earned through years of trial and error. Theresa showed him the subtleties of the livestock, how to read their moods and catch problems before they became serious. They worked long days, but the work felt purposeful in a way Benjamin had forgotten was possible. He was building something, maintaining something, being part of something larger than himself. And every evening when the work was done, he found reasons to spend time with Theresa. They walked to the creek often, or sat on the porch after supper, or read together in the small parlor while Thomas dozed by the fire. Conversation came easily between them. Theresa was well-read despite her isolated upbringing, curious about the world beyond their valley but content with her place in it. Benjamin found himself telling her things he had never shared with anyone, about his fears and regrets, about the guilt he carried for surviving when his brothers had not, about the emptiness that had driven him away from everything familiar. "You cannot blame yourself for living," Theresa said one evening as they sat by the creek. "Your brothers would not want that, I know, but knowing something and feeling it are different things. Then maybe you need to make peace with it. Honor their memory by actually living, not just existing." "Is that what I am doing now? Living?" "I think you are starting to. You smile more than when you first arrived. You seem lighter, like a weight is lifting." She was right. The constant gray fog that had surrounded him for months was beginning to dissipate. He woke each morning with purpose instead of dread. He looked forward to the day's work, to conversations over meals, to stolen moments alone with Theresa where they could talk about everything and nothing. He was falling in love with her. The realization crept up gradually, then hit him all at once one afternoon in early May. They were planting vegetables in the kitchen garden, working side by side in the warm sunshine. Theresa was humming while she worked, some tune he did not recognize, and there was dirt smudged across her cheek. She looked up and caught him staring, and instead of calling him out, she just smiled and went back to planting. That smile undid him completely. He was in love with her strength and competence, her quick mind and quicker wit, her kindness to animals and her devotion to her father. He loved how she looked in the morning with her hair still loose, and how she sounded when she laughed at something unexpected. He loved that she saw him clearly, all his flaws and fears, and seemed to like him anyway. The question was what to do about it. Thomas had clearly noticed something developing between them. Benjamin caught him watching them sometimes with an inscrutable expression. He had not objected to Benjamin spending time with Theresa, but he had not exactly encouraged it either. Benjamin could not blame him for being protective. Theresa was his only child, his partner in managing the farm, and probably the most important person in his world. Why would he trust her to a drifter who had appeared out of nowhere? Benjamin decided he needed to have a direct conversation. He found Thomas one morning working on repairing the corral fence and offered to help. They worked in silence for a while before Benjamin gathered his courage. "I want to talk to you about Theresa," he said. Thomas did not look up from the post he was setting. Figured that was coming. "I care about her, a great deal. And I think she cares about me too, though we have not spoken about it directly. I am not blind. I have seen how you look at each other. I want to court her properly with your permission. I know I am not much of a prospect right now. I do not have land or savings or much to offer beyond hard work and honest intentions. But I promise I would treat her with respect and do everything in my power to make her happy." Thomas finished tamping dirt around the post before straightening up and fixing Benjamin with a measuring stare. "What are your intentions exactly? Are you planning to stay, or is this just a pleasant diversion before you move on?" "I want to stay. I want to build a life here if you will have me. I know this is your farm and I am not asking to take anything from you. But if there is a way I could earn my place here, become a real partner in this operation, I would work myself to the bone to prove myself worthy." "This is not about worthy. My daughter is not a prize to be earned. This is about what is best for her, what will make her happy and secure." I understand that, and I know she is happy here doing this work, building this life with you. I am not trying to take her away from any of that. I want to be part of it." Thomas was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the mountains in the distance. "Her mother and I met when she was 20 and I was 22. I was working a mine shaft and had nothing to my name but debts and dreams. She was from a wealthy family, educated and refined, and I had no business courting her. But she saw something in me worth taking a chance on, and I spent every day after that trying to prove she was right. Did you? I hope so. We had 18 good years before the fever took her. 18 years of hard work and harder times, but we built something together. This farm, our daughter, a partnership that meant something. That is what Theresa deserves, someone who will build with her, not just take from her. That is what I want to give her. I am not looking for easy. I am looking for meaning, for home. I found both here." Thomas nodded slowly. "All right then. You have my permission to court her properly. But understand this: if you hurt her, if you decide this life is not for you after all and you leave, you will answer to me. Clear, completely clear. Thank you." They shook hands, and Benjamin felt a surge of relief and nervous anticipation. He had cleared the first hurdle. Now he needed to actually talk to Theresa about his feelings and hope she felt the same way. He found his opportunity that evening. After supper, he asked if she would walk with him, and she agreed easily. They headed toward the creek, following the familiar path in the gathering dusk. "I talked to your father today," Benjamin began once they were out of earshot of the house. "I heard. He seemed unusually thoughtful at supper. I asked his permission to court you properly." Theresa stopped walking and turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "You did?" "I did. And he agreed, though he made it clear he would have my hide if I hurt you." "That sounds like father." She was quiet for a moment, then asked softly, "Why did you ask his permission?" "Because I care about you. Because these past weeks have been the best I have had in years. Because when I think about the future now, I see it here with you, building something that matters." He took a breath and forced himself to be completely honest. "I am in love with you, Theresa. I was not looking for it, was not expecting it, but there it is. You have given me something I thought I had lost forever: hope. A reason to put down roots. A reason to believe in tomorrow." Theresa's eyes had gone bright with unshed tears. "I love you too. I have been trying not to, trying to protect myself in case you decided to leave. But I cannot help it. You are kind and hardworking, and you understand what it means to lose things that matter. You see me, really see me, not just as the farmer's daughter or an extra pair of hands. You make me feel like I matter. You do matter. You matter more to me than anything." He reached for her hand, and she laced her fingers through his. They stood there by the creek in the fading light, holding hands and smiling at each other like fools, and Benjamin felt his heart settle in a way it had not since before his family died. "So we are courting now?" Theresa asked with a small laugh. "If you are agreeable to that." "I am very agreeable, though father will probably insist on propriety and chaperones and all the proper behavior." I expected nothing less. They walked back to the farm hand in hand, and when Thomas saw them, he just nodded once and went back to whittling on the porch. Permission granted, relationship acknowledged, and Benjamin was officially courting the woman he loved. The next months were perhaps the happiest of Benjamin's life. He and Theresa spent every possible moment together, talking and working and learning each other's habits and preferences. Thomas, true to prediction, maintained appropriate oversight, but he also gave them space to build their relationship. More importantly, he began actively including Benjamin in long-term planning for the farm, discussing projects that would take years to complete and casually mentioning futures that clearly included Benjamin as a permanent fixture. Benjamin wrote to friends back in Texas, telling them he had found a place to settle. Some wrote back expressing surprise but happiness for him. Others never replied, and he realized those friendships had been more situational than substantive. It did not matter. His life was here now, with new possibilities unfolding every day. In June, Benjamin used his saved wages to buy a ring from a traveling merchant who passed through selling various goods. It was simple silver with a small blue stone, nothing fancy, but he thought it would suit Theresa's practical nature. He carried it around for a week, waiting for the right moment to propose. That moment came on a warm evening in late June. They had finished work early and decided to ride out to a high meadow Thomas had mentioned, where wildflowers grew thick in the summer. Benjamin borrowed one of the farm horses, and they rode together through the golden afternoon light. The meadow was everything Thomas had promised, a riot of color stretching across gentle slopes. They dismounted and walked through the flowers, and Theresa picked a handful of the brightest blooms with obvious delight. "I could stay here forever," she said, spinning in a circle with her arms outstretched. "It is perfect." "It is," Benjamin agreed, though he was watching her rather than the scenery. "Theresa, I need to ask you something." She turned to face him, and something in his expression made her go still. "All right. I know we have only known each other a few months, and maybe this is too soon, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life." He pulled out the ring and held it up, his hand only trembling slightly. "I love you. I love your strength and intelligence and the way you face every challenge head-on. I love building this life with you, and I want to keep building it for the rest of our lives. Will you marry me?" Theresa's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." Benjamin slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her for the first time, gentle and sweet and full of promise. She kissed him back with enthusiasm, and they stood there in the flower-filled meadow holding each other as if they could stop time through sheer will. "We should tell Father," Theresa said eventually, though she made no move to let go of him. "We should. Do you think he will be surprised?" "Not even slightly. He has been expecting this since you asked permission to court me." They rode back to the farm still grinning like children, and Thomas took one look at their faces and started laughing. "Well, it is about time. I was starting to think you would drag your feet all summer, boy." "You are not surprised?" Benjamin asked. "I would have been surprised if you had not proposed. You have been mooning over her for months." Thomas pulled them both into a rough hug. "Welcome to the family officially. Now we need to start planning a wedding." Planning a wedding in an isolated valley with no close neighbors proved simpler than expected. They decided on a small ceremony in August, giving them time to make arrangements, but not so long that waiting felt interminable. Thomas knew a circuit preacher who passed through the region several times a year, and he sent word requesting the man stop by in mid-August. They invited the few neighbors within reasonable distance, and sent word to Black Hawk for any friends who might want to make the trip. Theresa worked on altering her mother's blue dress, and Benjamin bought new clothes from a catalog, the first new things he had owned in years. The weeks leading up to the wedding were busy with both regular farm work and preparation. They cleaned the house thoroughly, prepared food that could be stored, and set up an outdoor area for the ceremony and small celebration afterward. Benjamin built a simple arbor from branches and wildflowers, and Theresa declared it perfect. The night before the wedding, Benjamin lay in the hayloft staring at the ceiling and marveling at how drastically his life had changed. 6 months ago, he had been a lost soul wandering aimlessly through Colorado, convinced he would never find peace or purpose again. Now he was hours away from marrying the woman he loved, from officially joining a family and claiming a place in the world. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the sky that perfect deep blue that only exists in the mountains. About 20 people gathered, including the circuit preacher, several neighboring farmers and their families, and a few acquaintances from Black Hawk who had known the Ellsworths for years. Benjamin stood under the arbor in his new clothes, feeling self-conscious but determined. Thomas stood beside him as his best man, having gruffly insisted on the honor. When Theresa appeared from the house wearing the altered blue dress, Benjamin felt his breath catch. She looked radiant, her auburn hair pinned up with small white flowers woven through it, her smile bright enough to outshine the sun. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged vows written from their hearts, promising to support each other through whatever hardships came, to build their life together with honesty and respect, to cherish what they were creating. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Benjamin kissed Theresa with perhaps more enthusiasm than was strictly appropriate for public ceremony, but nobody seemed to mind. The celebration afterward was modest but joyful. There was food and music courtesy of a neighbor who played fiddle, and dancing on the makeshift platform Benjamin had built. Thomas gave a short speech welcoming Benjamin officially to the family and expressing his certainty that his late wife would have approved of the match. Several people offered congratulations and advice, and children ran around playing while adults talked and ate. As evening approached and guests began departing, Benjamin and Theresa stood together watching the sun set behind the mountains. They were officially married now, partners in life and work, and the future stretched ahead full of possibility. "Happy?" Benjamin asked, pulling Theresa close. "Incredibly. You, more than I thought possible." Thomas had tactfully moved his belongings to the barn for the night, giving the newlyweds privacy in the house. It was a small gesture but meaningful, and Benjamin appreciated the older man's discretion. He and Theresa spent their wedding night in the room she had grown up in, now transformed into their shared space, and Benjamin felt himself letting go of the last remnants of the protective walls he had built around his heart. He was home. Finally, truly home. Life settled into new rhythms after the wedding. Benjamin was officially part of the farm operation now, with Thomas treating him as a full partner rather than hired help. They discussed major decisions together, and Benjamin's ideas were given equal weight to Thomas's experience. The farm prospered under their combined efforts. They expanded the cattle herd, improved the irrigation system for the crops, and completed repairs that had been put off for years. Theresa bloomed in her new role as wife, though her daily work changed little. She had always been the heart of the farm's operations, and that continued. What changed was the presence of partnership and support, the knowledge that she was building something with someone who loved her unconditionally. Benjamin and Theresa made a good team. They worked efficiently together, anticipating each other's needs and communicating without needing many words. The physical side of their marriage was tender and passionate in turns, and they took pleasure in learning each other's bodies and preferences. They talked late into the night about dreams and plans, about the life they wanted to build and the family they hoped to have. Winter came early that year, with the first snow falling in October. They spent the cold months focused on indoor projects and animal care, keeping the livestock healthy through the harsh weather. Benjamin proved adept at improvising repairs and solving problems, skills honed from years of ranch work that translated well to farming. By the time spring arrived in 1876, Theresa was pregnant. They had hoped for children, but the reality of actually expecting their first baby filled them both with excitement and trepidation. Thomas was delighted at the prospect of becoming a grandfather, though he tried to hide his enthusiasm behind gruff practicality. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through spring and summer. Theresa continued working as long as she felt able, though Benjamin and Thomas insisted on taking over the heavier tasks. She remained strong and healthy, and the local midwife who checked on her periodically declared everything normal. Their son was born in November during an early snowstorm, arriving with impressive lungs and a full head of dark hair. They named him William Thomas, honoring Benjamin's father and Theresa's. Thomas the elder was openly emotional meeting his grandson, holding the tiny baby with careful reverence and making promises about teaching him to farm properly. Benjamin discovered that fatherhood suited him. He loved the weight of his son in his arms, the milky baby smell, the way William's tiny hand would grip his finger with surprising strength. All the love he had locked away after losing his family found new focus in this perfect, helpless creature who depended entirely on his parents. Theresa was a natural mother, handling the demands of a newborn with the same competence she brought to everything else. She nursed William while planning spring planting, soothed him while reviewing finances, and somehow managed to keep the household running without seeming overwhelmed. Benjamin marveled at her strength and made sure she knew how much he appreciated everything she did. The first year of William's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and developmental milestones. He grew strong and healthy, reaching for everything with curious hands and babbling enthusiastically. Thomas doted on his grandson shamelessly, carving toys and singing songs Benjamin had never heard before. Life on the farm continued its seasonal rhythms. They had good years and lean years, whether that cooperated and whether that destroyed crops. Through it all, Benjamin felt anchored in a way he never had before. This was his family, his home, his purpose. The wandering restlessness that had driven him for so long had been replaced by deep contentment. In the summer of 1877, Theresa became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was harder, with more sickness and exhaustion. Benjamin worried constantly, but she assured him this was normal and the midwife confirmed everything was progressing as expected. Their daughter was born in March 1878, another snowstorm baby who arrived just as dawn was breaking. They named her Catherine Rose, and she had her mother's green eyes and what promised to be auburn hair. William, now 15 months old, was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to touch and inspect her constantly under careful supervision. Thomas was slowing down as the years passed, his joints bothering him more and his energy flagging earlier in the day. He still worked hard, but Benjamin gradually took on more of the physical labor, while Thomas focused on planning and oversight. Nobody discussed it directly, but they all understood that the farm's future rested increasingly on Benjamin and Theresa's shoulders. In the fall of 1879, Thomas took sick with pneumonia. They called the doctor from Black Hawk, but there was little to be done beyond keeping him comfortable and hoping his body would fight off the infection. For 2 weeks, the family kept vigil, taking turns sitting with Thomas as he struggled to breathe. Benjamin spent hours at his father-in-law's bedside, talking about the farm and the children, assuring him that everything would be managed properly. Thomas, weakened but lucid, extracted promises about maintaining what they had built and taking care of Theresa and the grandchildren he had grown to love so much. "You did good, boy," Thomas rasped one evening when it was just the two of them. "Better than I expected when you showed up with that lame horse. You have given my girl a good life, built something worth having. I am proud to call you son." "I am the one who should be grateful," Benjamin replied, his throat tight with emotion. "You took a chance on a drifter with nothing to his name. You taught me everything I know about farming, about building a life that means something. You gave me your daughter and your trust. I will never forget that. See that you do not." Thomas managed a weak smile. "And keep those grandchildren of mine happy. They are the future now." Thomas died 3 days later, peacefully in his sleep. They buried him on a hill overlooking the valley with a simple marker that identified him as a good man who built something lasting. The funeral was small but well attended, with neighbors speaking about Thomas's fairness and his willingness to help anyone in need. Theresa grieved hard for her father, the last link to her parents and her childhood. Benjamin held her through the tears and helped her process the loss, understanding from his own experience that grief could not be rushed or reasoned away. The children, sensing something wrong, were quieter than usual, and William asked repeatedly when grandfather was coming back. "He is not coming back," Theresa explained gently. "But he loved you very much, and he will always be watching over us." Life continued because it had to. The farm still needed tending, the animals still required care, and the children still needed parents who could function through their grief. Benjamin stepped fully into the role Thomas had held, making final decisions and carrying ultimate responsibility. Theresa supported him while managing her own sorrow, and together they kept everything running. Over the following years, they continued building on the foundation Thomas and his wife had established decades earlier. They expanded operations gradually, adding more land when a neighbor sold out and moved east. They improved the house, adding a proper second story with separate bedrooms for the children. They invested in better equipment and breeding stock, always careful not to overextend but pushing for steady growth. William grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved working with animals and showed early promise at understanding the land. Catherine was more social and adventurous, constantly exploring and asking questions about everything. A third child arrived in 1882, another son they named James Edward. He had his father's darker coloring and proved to be the most stubborn of the three. Benjamin discovered that watching his children grow brought joy he had not anticipated. Every milestone, every achievement, every personality quirk delighted him. He taught them to ride, to handle tools, to understand the rhythms of farm life. Theresa taught them to read and cipher, using her mother's old books and adding new ones as they could afford them. The farm prospered under their stewardship. They earned a reputation for quality livestock and fair dealing, which brought buyers from as far away as Denver. They helped neighbors when times were hard and received help in return when they needed it. They became pillars of their small community, the kind of people others looked to for stability and common sense. In 1885, tragedy struck when a fire started in the barn one dry summer evening. Benjamin saw the smoke from the fields and ran, but the flames spread with terrifying speed. They managed to get all the animals out safely, but the barn itself was lost, collapsing in a shower of sparks and burning timber. Standing in the smoking ruins the next morning, Benjamin felt a familiar despair trying to take hold. This was the kind of setback that could destroy everything they had built. The cost of rebuilding would be enormous, and they would lose income while construction took place. "We will rebuild," Theresa said firmly, standing beside him with soot on her face and determination in her eyes. "It is just a building. We are all safe, the animals are safe, and we have each other. That is what matters. The cost we will manage. We always do. This farm has survived worse, and so have we." She was right. The community came together to help, neighbors arriving with tools and materials, contributing labor and expertise. In 6 weeks, they had a new barn that was actually an improvement over the old one, with better ventilation and more efficient layout. The experience reinforced what Benjamin had learned over the years, that home was not just a place, but the people and connections that made it meaningful. The children continued growing, each developing distinct personalities and interests. William, true to his serious nature, declared his intention to take over the farm someday. Catherine wanted to be a teacher, inspired by her mother's stories about education. James changed his mind about his future career approximately weekly, enthusiastic about whatever had most recently captured his attention. In the spring of 1888, Theresa discovered she was pregnant again at age 33. This was unexpected but welcome, though Benjamin worried about her health. The pregnancy was difficult, with more complications than previous ones, and they called the doctor from Black Hawk to attend the birth. Their fourth child, a daughter named Margaret Ann, was born tiny but fierce in August 1888. She required extra care in her first months, but she proved to be a fighter, gradually gaining weight and strength. The older children adored their baby sister, fighting over who got to hold her and help with her care. The years continued passing, marked by seasons and harvests and the steady growth of their family. Benjamin was in his late 30s now, weathered by outdoor work but fundamentally happy with the life he had built. Theresa remained beautiful to him, the lines around her eyes and the gray starting in her hair only adding to her appeal. They celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary in 1886 with a quiet dinner, just the two of them after the children were asleep. They toasted to 10 years of partnership, of building something meaningful together, of love that had deepened and matured through shared challenges. "You ever regret it?" Theresa asked. "Staying here instead of moving on, seeing more of the world?" "Never," Benjamin answered truthfully. "Everything I need is right here. You gave me something I thought I had lost forever, a reason to stay, to build, to hope. This life, our family, this farm, it is everything I was looking for when I was wandering lost. I found home in you." "You gave me the same thing," Theresa said softly. "Partnership and love and someone who sees me as more than just the farmer's daughter. You made me believe in possibilities I had not let myself imagine." They kissed across the table, the same passion present as in their early days but tempered now with deep knowledge and comfort. This was the good stuff, Benjamin thought. The lasting foundation that carried you through hard times and made good times even better. As their children entered their teenage years, the farm evolved again. William at 15 was already nearly as capable as his father, taking on significant responsibilities and making good decisions. Catherine at 13 was helping teach younger children in the valley, proving her gift for education. James at 11 was still finding his way but showing promise with mechanical things, always tinkering and improving tools. Margaret at 5 was the household's darling, spoiled by her older siblings but managing to stay grounded. Benjamin and Theresa began planning for the next phase, when the children would leave to build their own lives, and the farm would transition to the next generation. They talked about expanding the operation to support multiple families, about building additional houses on the property, about creating something that could sustain their descendants for generations. In 1893, they hosted William's wedding to a young woman named Sarah from a neighboring farm. The ceremony was held in the same spot where Benjamin and Theresa had married 15 years earlier, and watching his son make the same promises Benjamin had made brought tears to his eyes. The circle continuing, the next generation taking their turn. William and Sarah moved into a new house on the property, and William officially became a partner in the farm operation. Benjamin found himself in the position Thomas had once held, teaching and guiding while gradually stepping back from the hardest physical labor. It was strange but satisfying, seeing the pattern repeat with improvements learned from experience. Catherine left for teacher training in Denver in 1894, pursuing her dream of education. Benjamin struggled with her absence, his first child to truly leave the valley, but he was proud of her determination and knew she would succeed. She wrote letters describing her studies and the bustling city, and occasionally Benjamin wondered what his life might have been like if he had chosen a different path. But the wondering was idle curiosity, not regret. He had made the right choice all those years ago. James surprised everyone by developing serious interest in veterinary medicine after helping deliver a difficult calf. He began reading everything he could find about animal care and declared his intention to pursue formal training. Benjamin and Theresa encouraged this, seeing the value of having medical expertise within the family operation. By 1895, Benjamin was 45 years old and reflected on how far he had come since that desperate evening when he had ridden into this valley with a lame horse and a lost soul. He had built a life beyond his wildest dreams, a thriving farm, a loving family, deep roots in a community that respected him. The scared, grieving man who had been running from loss had been transformed into someone confident in his place in the world. Theresa, at 40, was still the center of his universe. She had weathered alongside him through challenges and triumphs, always his partner and support. They still walked to their spot by the creek on summer evenings, still talked for hours about everything and nothing, still found joy in each other's company. "I was thinking," Theresa said one evening as they sat watching the sunset, "about that first night you stayed here. Do you remember?" "Of course. You brought me supper in the barn and asked what I was running from. You looked so lost, so determined to keep everyone at a distance." "I was terrified," Benjamin admitted, "not of staying but of wanting to stay, of letting myself care about something I might lose. And now I know that the risk was worth it. Loving you, building this life, raising our children, even knowing it will all end someday, I would not trade a single moment. This is what makes life worth living. I am glad you stopped here, glad Stella got that stone in her hoof. Glad you were brave enough to stay. Me too. Every single day, me too." They sat together as darkness gathered, two people who had found each other through chance and built something lasting through choice. The farm would continue after they were gone, passed to children and grandchildren who would add their own chapters to the story. But the foundation had been laid here by a weary cowboy who found home and a farmer's daughter who found partnership. Years continued passing in the steady rhythm of seasons. Margaret grew into a confident young woman interested in both farming and teaching, determined to blend her parents' worlds. Catherine returned from Denver in 1897, now a certified teacher, and established a small school in Black Hawk that served the scattered families in the region. William and Sarah had their first child in 1896, making Benjamin and Theresa grandparents and giving them a glimpse of the future extending beyond their own lives. James left for veterinary training in 1898, and the house felt emptier with 3 of 4 children gone. But they visited regularly, and the farm remained the family's gathering place for holidays and important events. The next generation was finding their paths while maintaining connection to their roots, which was exactly what Benjamin and Theresa hoped for. In 1900, as a new century dawned, Benjamin stood on the porch of the house he had helped expand and improve over the years. He was 50 years old, weathered but healthy, surrounded by evidence of a life well lived. Grandchildren played in the yard where his own children had played. Fields he had planted stretched toward the mountains. Buildings he had constructed or repaired stood solid against the elements. Theresa joined him on the porch, slipping her hand into his with the ease of long familiarity. What are you thinking about? How lucky I am. How different my life could have been if I had not stopped here that evening. It was not luck. It was choice. You chose to stay, chose to build, chose to love. That is what made the difference. We made good choices together. The best choices. They stood together watching their grandchildren play, the farm continuing its eternal rhythms around them, and Benjamin felt complete in a way he had never imagined possible during his wandering days. He had found what he was seeking without even knowing what it was, not just a place, but a purpose. Not just a home, but a family. Not just survival, but a life rich with meaning and love. As evening approached, the family gathered for supper, multiple generations around the table that had witnessed countless meals and conversations over the decades. Benjamin looked around at the faces of his children and grandchildren, at Theresa still beautiful beside him, at the life they had created from nothing but determination and love. This was legacy. This was success. Not measured in gold or fame, but in relationships nurtured and values passed down, and a place in the world that would continue after he was gone. The weary cowboy who had arrived with nothing had built something that would last, and that knowledge filled him with profound satisfaction. That night, lying beside Theresa in the darkness, Benjamin reflected on the journey that had brought him here. All the loss and pain that had driven him from Texas, the aimless wandering through Colorado, the evening he had ridden into this valley desperate, and alone every step had been necessary to bring him to this moment. He would not change any of it, because changing the past would change the present, and his present was exactly where he wanted to be. "I love you," he whispered to Theresa, who was drowsing beside him. "I love you too," she murmured back. "Always have, always will." Benjamin closed his eyes with a smile, knowing that tomorrow would bring more of the work and life and love that had defined his best years. The scared young man running from pain had become a confident elder secure in his place, and that transformation was perhaps the greatest gift he had ever received. The years ahead would bring more changes and challenges. Nothing remained static, and life had a way of throwing unexpected curves. But Benjamin faced the future with confidence born of experience and surrounded by people who mattered. Whatever came next, they would handle it together, just as they always had. And on quiet evenings when he walked to the creek alone, Benjamin sometimes thought about the moment his life changed, a weary cowboy stopping at a small farm, meeting a farmer's daughter with green eyes and capable hands, and finding the home he had been seeking without knowing it existed. That single moment had set everything else in motion, and he would be grateful for it until his last breath. The farm continued thriving into the new century. William proved to be an excellent manager, implementing improvements while respecting the foundation his parents had built. Catherine's school was successful, with students traveling from miles around for quality education. James returned with his veterinary credentials and set up practice serving the entire region, becoming an essential resource for farmers and ranchers. Margaret married in 1902 to a young man who wanted to farm, and they built a house on the eastern section of the property. The farm now supported 3 families comfortably, exactly as Benjamin and Theresa had envisioned years earlier. The expansion was managed carefully, with everyone contributing according to their abilities and sharing in the rewards. Benjamin gradually stepped back from daily operations, focusing on being a grandfather and advisor rather than primary laborer. His body reminded him constantly that he was no longer 26, and he accepted the limitations with grace. Theresa too slowed down, though she remained sharp and involved in all family decisions. They celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary in 1906, with a large gathering that brought together family and friends from across the region. It was a testament to the relationships they had built and maintained over decades, and Benjamin felt overwhelmed by the love and respect evident in the celebration. 30 years. Theresa mused that evening after everyone had left. It feels like both forever and no time at all. Best 30 years of my life, Benjamin said, and I am looking forward to however many more we get, greedy man. When it comes to time with you, absolutely. They continued making the most of their years together. They traveled occasionally, visiting Denver and other cities to see what the modern world was becoming, but they always returned to the farm with relief and happiness. This was home, unchanging in its essential nature even as details evolved. In the winter of 1908, Benjamin fell ill with influenza. It was serious enough that the doctor insisted on complete rest, and for weeks, Benjamin was confined to bed while his body fought the infection. Theresa rarely left his side, and the family took turns keeping vigil. He recovered eventually, but the illness aged him noticeably, leaving him weaker than before. "You scared me," Theresa admitted once he was out of danger. "I am not ready to lose you yet." "I am not ready to be lost," Benjamin replied. "We still have too much living to do." And they did continue living, though at a slower pace. Benjamin spent more time in his chair on the porch, watching the farm operate around him and offering advice when asked. He played with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, told stories about the old days, and enjoyed the peace that came from knowing his legacy was secure. Theresa remained his constant companion, still sharp and opinionated, still the center of the family's emotional life. They had weathered everything together and emerged stronger for it, their bond deepened by shared experience and tested by hardship. In the spring of 1910, as Benjamin approached 60, he reflected on the strange mathematics of a life lived well. 51 years since his birth, 34 years since his arrival in this valley, 34 years of marriage and family, and building something meaningful. The numbers seemed arbitrary, but they represented something profound, a life transformed from despair to contentment, from solitary wandering to deep connection. He thought often about his brothers, dead now for over 3 decades, and wondered what they would think of his life. He hoped they would be proud, hoped they would understand why he had left Texas and how he had found peace. He still missed them, probably always would, but the grief no longer consumed him. It had been transformed into bittersweet memory, present but no longer debilitating. Thomas too remained in his thoughts, the man who had taken a chance on a stranger and given him everything that mattered. Benjamin tried to honor that gift every day by being the kind of person Thomas had believed him to be: honest, hardworking, devoted to family and land. And Theresa, his partner in all things, who had seen potential in a lost soul and loved him into becoming someone worthy of that vision. She had given him children and home and purpose, had stood beside him through every challenge, had made him better simply by believing he could be. He owed her everything and spent every remaining day trying to show her that. On their 35th wedding anniversary in 1911, the family hosted another celebration. Benjamin was slower now, his hair fully gray and his face deeply lined, but his smile was genuine as he looked around at what they had created. 4 children, all successful and happy in their own ways, numerous grandchildren with more arriving regularly. A farm that was prospering under capable management, a legacy that would continue long after he was gone. "We did all right," he said to Theresa that evening as they sat together watching fireflies dance across the fields. "We did better than all right. We built something beautiful." "You built it, I just helped. We built it together. That was always the point: partnership, combining strengths, creating something neither of us could have managed alone. I love you. Have I mentioned that recently? Not in the past hour or so. Unacceptable. I love you more than I thought possible to love another person. You saved my life in ways large and small. You gave me reason to believe in tomorrow. You saved mine too. I was content before you arrived, but not truly happy. You showed me the difference, showed me what partnership and passion and deep connection could be. We saved each other. They sat together until the stars came out, two people who had found each other through chance and held on through choice, their love story written across decades and generations. And when they finally went inside to sleep, Benjamin felt the same gratitude he had felt thousands of times before: thankfulness that a weary cowboy had stopped at a small farm, met a farmer's daughter, and found the home he had been seeking without knowing it was waiting for him.